have 2 children. My son will be 10 in November. My daughter had her 7th birthday on Monday. This is the 2nd year in a row that I have not been allowed to wish my daughter a happy birthday. I was the primary caretaker of my 2 children. My ex-husband has abused both of us. He has been convicted of domestic violence. He has been substantiated, which is a funny little word that CPS uses to mean that they're not convicted or charged with a crime, but that they found reasonable evidence that it was committed. He duct taped our son's mouth shut when he was 9 months old because he was crying. CPS did nothing. I have never been convicted of a crime nor charged with one. I do not drink, I do not smoke, I do not use drugs unless they have been prescribed to me, and even then I'm leery of taking them. My ex-husband, however, as I mentioned, has been convicted of domestic violence in Livingston County. He has been substantiated by CPS in Oakland County for physical abuse of our son. He has been investigated by CPS after our daughter has made allegations of sexual abuse. At that point, after 5 years, they finally decided to suspend his parenting time for 3 weeks, while he in turn had filed for custody. He had us kicked out of our home, which I was awarded in the divorce, but was having a hard time keeping up with the payments because he had also stalked me and cost me my job. Family court is a totally different beast in the world. Abusers of children are not just parents or caretakers, they are also judges. Right here you see Linda Hallmark. She's been on the bench since Governor Engler appointed her many years ago. Oftentimes, our judges are up for election and they get put right back in because of blind voting. She told me in court that because we were staying at La Casa's domestic violence shelter, I was selfish. We were not staying there for what my ex-husband did to me at the time. We were there because of what my daughter told a CPS worker during an interview of what he did to her. They placed us there after they put her into custody. I had, at that point, joint custody and joint legal. He had what the judge at the beginning thought was liberal parenting time. He got them for 3 hours on Tuesdays and 5 hours on Sundays, unsupervised. After the divorce was finalized, he was awarded increased time, which was to include 3 hours on Tuesdays and every other weekend from Saturday at 5 until Sunday at 5, and 2 phone calls a week. He has successfully tried to alienate me from my children by telling them stories. He has told my children that I don't want to talk to them because by law, I am now on supervised visits. I have to pay to see my children, or I have to have my mother drive an hour and a half to spend the day with them. Because she told me I was unstable. There is no evidence to indicate. CPS told friend of the court that there was no reason to change custody, that they were safe and happy with me. Well provided for. I was the PTO treasurer of their school for 2 years, very heavily involved in their school. He doesn't know who the principal is. I have had to file 5 federal complaints against my son's doctors because they refuse to provide me records, which by law they are not allowed to do. Until there is an order restricting me from having access, they are in violation of federal law. Judge Hallmark, through my Facebook page, I have found at least 7 or 8 other cases out of her courtroom where a protective parent has had their children taken away. The worst of which was a father in Oakland County who had very strong concerns for the welfare of his 2 young daughters who were living in the custody of their mother who had remarried a registered sex offender. And according to one of Linda Hallmark's referees, She had looked into it and said that the sex abuse was not that bad. She thought his children would be okay. He was also put on supervised visits. I am not allowed to call my children. If they call me, I am allowed to answer the phone. Thanks to Verizon's 15-hour outage last night, I got a voicemail from my daughter at about 5:30 this morning. They called me about 7 o'clock last night. I am not allowed to call them back if I miss their call. My children have cried that no one is helping them. No one is helping them come back to mom. CPS has investigated but done nothing because they will go to his home, interview in his home with him in the next room. They have drawn pictures of physical abuse. He has choked my son. He has shoved his head into a wall. And most recently, I have learned that he has threatened to kill my son. And these are not for offenses like he set something on fire. These are for things like spilling pancakes on the floor. My daughter cries every night. They have now been allowed by my ex-husband, because he is the one who is permitted by court order to dictate when I see my children. I have no say. He sets the schedule, and if I can't make a date, it's gone. He is allowing them to spend the night as long as my mother is there. And my daughter drew me a picture on the way to drop them off of her in 2 different beds and labeled them Mom's house and Dad's house, and said that she is safe at Mom's and scared at Dad's. But they don't do anything because, as the divorced mother, I am the alienator. I am seeking only to rip their father out of their lives, when what is actually happening is I'm trying to protect them, which is oftentimes the case. Domestic violence is often looked at as an accusation made in family court to take the children away. It is never seen as a way to try and protect the children. And what I'm trying to do now is raise awareness that these judges need to be educated. Livingston County recently had safe havens training. Our circuit court judges were there. They spent the entire day learning about domestic violence, child abuse, and how it is skewed, and the myths that are portrayed in family court and how they need to be dispelled. Abusers should not have custody. Linda Hallmark is abusing my children by forcing them to live with someone who is hurting them, by denying them a home with me, who has never hurt them, and forcing them to live with a drug addict and an abuser. These judges are all over Michigan, and they're all over the country, and they are all over the world. There are women like Maria, who's been jailed for trying to protect her children. There are cases that have been issued gag orders, which is why you don't hear about this problem. And what I'm trying to do now is start a nonprofit called Promote Judicial Awakening, to where we can raise the funding to bring safe havens training to all of our Michigan judges, and eventually to make it a mandatory training for all family court officials, from CPS workers all the way on up to our judges, the front of the court, the referees, and make them aware. Part of the problem is that we've got an election coming up. If you look at your ballot, you will see in Oakland County, for instance, there are 7 positions open for circuit court. There are 9 candidates, 7 of whom have the word incumbent beside their name. And people will vote blindly. They do not look into people's records. They do not court watch. They say, oh, they've been on the bench before. They must be great. They will never affect my life. The governor might. But these judges, they don't have any impact on us or my family. Let's just leave them there. You need to educate yourselves and vote smart. Learn who the candidates are. Write your senators and make them aware of court licensed abuse, because it needs to stop. And it's going to take all of our Michigan voters to do that.